What's up, everybody? It's 4:30 in the morning. I've been working tirelessly, but slowly beginning to be not tirelessly anymore. More likely than not, you don't know who I am, or what this is, or why I'm doing it. My goal with Unique Techniques is to chronicle the history of inspiring people that believe in themselves and their art. Today would have been Micheal Larsen, otherwise known as Eyedea's 30th birthday. I only had an opportunity to rap with Mike one time, but he changed my life. And that's the general consensus I've gathered from the people that took it upon themselves to listen to his music, because it's not an easy task. It demands your full attention and forces you to look at parts of yourself you might not like. But I think that's what good art does. It shows different people different things. And when it has a strong enough influence, it can cause seemingly similar people to perceive entirely two different things. To me, Eyedea embodies exactly what it is to have a unique technique. Making art not because it's glamorous or for a taste of fame, but because you must. Because without your creation, the world would be just that much more dull, or dreary, or dark. To quote Eyedea, we innovate to generate an intricately interwoven tapestry of musical and ethical epiphanies. We are artists. I am an artist. The people I know are artists. The people I love are artists. It is with great honor that I bring you Kathy Averill, nurturer and caregiver of literally countless individuals, but simply mom to the one and only Eyedea.
I'm a b-boy, that's the best way to define me. Born in 81, been rhyming since the early 90s. And I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. That's why fools try to be down with my crew, but you reciting people chatter, either that or beating off. Piece to no name, weaving patterns that'll leave them lost. I keep a choke chain on the people's thoughts to teach the whole game how to read between the chalk. Okay, we so crazy, don't play me, just pay me, you baby.
PCP, Unique Techniques. I am very, very excited to sit down with Kathy Averill, Mike Larsen's mother, Eyedea. So really, thank you for coming in tonight.
Thanks for having me.
I've met a lot of hip-hoppers in the last year that have the utmost respect for what you allowed Mike to become. And they just speak of you really, really strongly, and that you were always really welcoming and ready to have them in your home. So again, I really respect that. So where did you grow up?
St. Paul. I grew up on the west side of St. Paul.
So what school did you go to?
I went to Riverview Elementary, Roosevelt Junior High, and Humboldt Senior High.
So then you went to Augsburg?
Yep.
What did you go to school for?
I have a degree in secondary education and adolescent psychology.
I was a psych major too. What did you hope to do with that?
I actually didn't go to Augsburg until recently. I graduated in 2007.
Wow. What made you want to go back to school?
Mikey forced me to go to school. He did, because of all the kids that have lived in the house and all the teens that I've helped and stuff like that. When he graduated from high school, he and Max said, you tricked me. And I said, of course I did. I had to trick you. How else were you going to finish and, do what you wanted to do? And he said it was time for me to go get paid to trick other kids.
What do you mean by that?
Trick. You trick yourself into doing positive things, affirmations, all to get better, all to be, we keep negative things as human beings. There's an old saying that, it takes 100 positive things to replace one negative thing. So you trick yourself until you get to that positive part. Because otherwise you just dwell on the negative or on the people that don't like you or on whatever you didn't get, the good grade, the driver's license, the whatever. But if you continuously move yourself forward and say each little thing was a better step and I did better today than I did yesterday, you're tricking yourself until you get to that where you really feel that and really believe that.
That's really interesting. I was talking to Mario, Mario Morales.
Yep.
He's a friend of Mike's, for people that don't know. And he kind of explained Mike's idea of shadows and being, if you turn around and look at your shadow, you're no longer creating a bigger shadow. You're just concentrating on what you've already done.
Right.
And it seemed like he was very adamant about moving forward always.
Correct. Always. And taking that little bit of what you did and then improving on it and moving it forward and then sharing it and then trying to get somebody else to build that little bit onto whatever it was and then moving it forward and then sharing it and then the next person building on that. And
At what point did Mike become really comfortable in his art?
different points in time, different arts. He was probably more comfortable with than others. Mike was always comfortable with his writing. He wrote his first poem when he was in kindergarten.
Okay.
So writing was always, and building and creating were always something that he was very comfortable with. I mean, he made all his friends when he was 6 years old play in a fake band, and they made all the instruments out of wood, and then we strung Christmas lights up over the backyard.
Yeah.
And made all the neighbors come, and we had popcorn and Kool-Aid, and everybody had to sit down, and then they lip synced, and I don't know what it was. It was probably Poison, Guns N' Roses, Metallica, something like that. So he was always very comfortable in that stuff. In his music, he was not as comfortable with, because it had more to do with the perception that people had, not that he had. Because a lot of people interpret his songs in a specific way and connect in that way. And then they kept him in that box.
Yeah.
That was all he was to them, was that one way they connected. Mm-hmm. But that's not all Mike was.
Right.
And so he was never satisfied or happy in that aspect of his art.
Like he was only being presented in a certain way that people wanted him to be.
Yeah. And there were many dimensions, and there were a lot of things that, on the surface, it's this, but if you dig deeper, it's this. And if you even go farther, it's this. And there's this extra meaning in this. And there's this connection between this and this song, and this form of music and that. And that's what he was doing and trying to do. And he was comfortable with that, but he wasn't comfortable with the response people gave to him.
Sure. Did he share his vision with you a lot in terms of what he meant when he was writing a song?
Oh, yeah, a lot. And a lot of times he would explain the songs to me, especially if there were songs that people would misinterpret either me or something that happened in his life, or things that weren't real that he was writing about, because he never wanted people to come back at me and say, it's this or it's that. So he did a lot of explaining of what the music was and where it came from and what emotion it was and that type of stuff.
Was he always really smart?
Yes.
Did that ever scare you?
No. It never scared me, because there was always more to learn. There was always something else. There's just a tremendous amount of, things out there that you can learn and you can accomplish and you can get knowledge from and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I knew there was never a lack of things for him to learn or to be involved in. But when he was little and he would argue with me as a 2-year-old and actually argue point 1, point 2, point 3, that was irritating. And I used to tell him all the time, I'm not arguing with a 2-year-old. I never said I'm the parent or because I said so. There was always a reason why.
Yeah.
But sometimes it was, I'm just not arguing with a 2-year-old. No, you can't run in the street. The cars can't see you. You're not tall enough. I'm not arguing with you about it.
Right.
That's all there is to it. So those types of things.
What kind of music did you kind of bring him up with? What were you listening to in the house when he was
everything.
a child?
We listened to, of course, old funk and rock and even classical, Christmas music, bebop, everything. I have records from my grandparents.
So was that a big source of Mike's music?
Yeah. I didn't have a lot of in my day, they were 8 tracks. Mm-hmm. And so, I had records and a record player and I had that a lot even when I was a kid, because that's what it was.
Yeah.
And so there were a lot of records. We even have 45s.
Yeah.
We have 33s, some of them.
Now, did Mike make a lot of his music?
Yes.
like for Oliver Hart?
Mike did all his music.
All of that.
Yes.
I guess that was never something that, just within the last year, I've come to kind of find that out. I didn't feel like it was ever anything that he really like pushed, that he was a producer.
No,
but
he never.
But he was.
Yeah.
Completely in every sense of the word.
Yeah.
I read that Chris Blood helped them record Firstborn.
Yep.
But other than that, it was him.
Yep.
Were you ever musically inclined?
Yes and no. Everything's pretty much yes and no.
Yeah.
No, in the sense that I don't feel that I'm musically inclined, but yes, we were required to take an instrument. So I learned how to play the clarinet and the guitar and a little bit on the piano. But that doesn't make me musically inclined.
Did Mike ever record you?
No.
Okay.
No.
How did you help facilitate Mike's passion for creating?
By goofy rules. We have goofy rules for everybody who lived in my house.
Do you have an example of that?
Sure, we had the NS rules, what we had as teenagers, and Mario and a bunch of those other guys, Pete and Bobby and Dan, and they'll all know what they are. The NS rules were, for my point of view, we had no substances, no sex, no swearing. I had a swear jar in my house. It was 25 cents. Didn't matter who you were. And I used to tell them, I don't care if it's God Almighty comes down and swears at me, they better be putting money in the jar.
Yep.
Slug would come over and he'd drop $20. Just put it in the jar, because that's how it's going to happen.
Yep.
And then they got to pick rules. And the only one I really remember from them was no sucker MCs.
All right.
So those were the 4 NS, because they all start with no and then S.
So did he have a lot of sessions at your house?
All the time. Yeah. We had 2 studios. Firstborn was done in the house.
Okay.
In the little studio. And then after Mike won the Blaze Battle, he built a big studio that he designed and everything. There's actually a door in my house that everybody that recorded in that little studio has signed.
Yeah, it's just piecing together. I had heard that he mixed. That was how I knew he kind of had a studio, but I just was never made aware that he produced. And I think that's really speaks volumes about the creative world he lived in. So do you remember any particular sessions that you really enjoyed? Did you go down and sit down there?
Yes and no. Sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, when Mike and Max were young and living in the house, some of the stuff that's off of the Grand Sixth Sense that we just put out, that's probably the funnest sessions I remember.
And that was recorded for Mike's grandparents?
Yeah. Yep.
In what capacity was that? Like why was it for them?
Oh, because Max had just gotten whatever new machine, I don't know the name of it. I want to say MP3, but I don't think that's
MPC?
it. MPC, maybe.
Cool.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Something. And it was the first time they got to swear. And so there's a lot of swearing, and they were joking around a lot. And there's a lot of music on there that was fun. Mm-hmm. They have like an info commercial and stuff like that. And it's just fun. And so those sessions are things that I remember the most. And that was their first like try at anything. Mm-hmm. So then they just gave it to my mom and dad.
Okay.
You know, it was a tape. Actually.
So how long had they been playing together before they did that? Or like doing
not long. I mean, Max had maybe come to the house and maybe lived there for a year.
Okay. So they grew up, they lived together for a little while.
Yep, as teens.
Okay. What got him into music in terms of the creation aspect? When did he decide to move from the fake band to like picking up an instrument or rapping or?
Probably when he was a young teen and he was breakdancing, but he wanted to write and tell stories. And so he couldn't actually devote enough time to practicing both, like writing and breaking. And so he had to decide. Yeah. And he thought that he could use his writing in music and be a lyricist or a singer or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that way he could still combine some of the aspects of hip hop
Yeah.
which he was, starting to get into and learning about and all that stuff, which he really liked.
Yep.
With telling stories, and then that just it became music.
How did he get interested in breaking?
Well, you'd probably have to ask Phil and Mario and Pete and Damien and Jason and the rest of them, because that's kind of what they were doing. I mean, he had been skateboarding, and I guess that was breaking would be like the next step or the next,
Yeah. So did he like punk rock?
Yep.
Because I hear that in his music for sure. He's definitely got the punk attitude.
Yeah.
So when did hip hop kind of come into like the fold?
Probably when he was an early teenager. He had a lot of Mike's early music, like from 8 to let's say 10 or so, was really metal-ish. I mean, it was Metallica and Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
And,
So was he playing guitar?
No, he was playing the piano.
Ah. When did he get into guitar?
He didn't actually pick up a guitar until the last probably 4 or 5 years.
Wow. I feel like when I listened to everything that he did that I could get my hands on in the last week, and it seemed like when he started out he was really excited about rapping, and then towards the last stuff he had done he was really interested in being a good songwriter.
I think he's always been interested in being a good songwriter, telling a story.
Yeah.
Even those early fun ones, even the Sixth Sense
they're
and stuff,
definitely
they're still
stories. Yeah.
And
Styrofoam.
yeah, Well, and that's because he was trying to get a grant. I was such a rotten little kid. He was trying to get a grant to figure out how you could recycle styrofoam. So he was doing all these experiments on it, bombarding it with water and high energy and dry ice and burning it, and I mean all kinds of just weird stuff.
And this would have been at 13, 14?
No, he would have been a little earlier than that. He was trying to figure out how to recycle styrofoam. He was probably 9 or 10. So those are things that led into music. And, I can't figure out this, so I'm going to try to figure out this.
Was he always really focused on what he was doing, or would he kind of pick up
he was
new
always
things all the time? And just
he always paid attention to new things and stuff like that. But if he was doing something specific, he was paying attention to that. But he still would acknowledge the other things that were coming in. Mm-hmm. But if he was, like, when him and my mom started writing the poetry books, he was very focused on, this is what we're going to do for the next 3 days, and this is how we're going to do it. And even though everything else still was going on when they did that first poetry book, it was Soundset, and he was out on tour and all kinds of stuff. He was doing all that, but his concentration was on the book with my mom.
Yeah.
So, he was easy to split things and focus on things and still pay attention to the outer
project-based, kind of.
Yeah.
Did you always take his music seriously?
Do you mean did I support it, or did what he was saying did I take serious?
Yes.
Or to heart?
Of course you supported him, but when did it become apparent that it was going to be something that he could do for a living?
Oh, I always knew he was going to do something. I never knew what it was.
Yeah.
And I used to tell him that when he was really little. I mean, 2, 3 years old, And I used to tease him that he was going to be on the debate team, or he was going to be a politician, or something. I didn't know
that.
I didn't know what he was going to do, but I knew he was going to be involved and affect a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I don't think he ever believed that. When I would say that, he would say stuff like, well, your mom, and you have to, and that's what parents do, and stuff like that. And it was, no, you are going to. I know that.
Yep.
And then when he started doing music, it was like, oh, this is how you're going to do that. So you're not going to be the politician or the lawyer.
Yeah.
You're going to do it this way.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
How did you feel about rap music initially?
I have always said there's a difference between rap music and hip-hop music.
Yeah.
Rap music, I don't think I'm so crazy about, especially, the beginnings. Although Sugar Hill did a great job. That's actually the beginning. But the other people that have come along and the beat 'em up, shoot 'em up, kill 'em up, who cares?
Right.
Go look out your window. But the difference, I think, in hip-hop is that it's more socially orientated in the sense that there's these injustices in the world, and if we can band together and learn to get along, maybe we can actually influence these and make them not so prevalent.
So did Mike kind of help you differentiate between the two?
No, he used to tell me I was crazy.
Of course, you're his mom.
Yeah.
At what point did you like feel comfortable enough to allow him to start hanging out with these older people?
Mike always hung out with older people.
Okay.
I mean, even when he was skateboarding or when he was doing special effects or when he was building forts, Mikey's always been the youngest.
Special effects.
Yeah, he liked to make gory things and make movies and make bullet holes and freak people out and
He's
stuff
a little
like
bit
that.
of a joker.
Yes.
Practical jokes.
Yep. Learned magic. I mean, all kinds of stuff.
Were you concerned at all about the influence that the community that he was coming up in might have on him?
No, not really. I have a stronger influence.
Yeah. Again, mother.
Yeah.
I remember reading or seeing an interview where Mike mentioned he was really homesick on the first Atmosphere tour. Did you travel a lot as a family
Yeah.
when you were younger, or when
Yeah.
he was younger?
Yeah. We used to take a couple vacations a year, different places. drives.
What's one in particular that you remember?
Well, Disney World when he was a teenager. My parents have a place in Orlando, so we would go a few different times.
Okay.
So throughout his life, we went several different times. One time when he was a teenager, we took his girlfriend and a couple of friends and went. And as a kid, we took we'd go as a family, my parents and my whole family and, all the kids and that stuff. So we would do that. I have people that live other places, and so we would go to like Seattle a couple times a year or up to the cabin, or my dad used to race car drive, so we used to go to tracks and stuff like that.
Cool.
And so
Was that something he did for a living, or was it a hobby?
amateur SCCA is Sports Car Club of America.
Okay.
And he was national champion in the 70s for several years.
Did Mike
Go to the racetrack.
Yeah, did he appreciate that a lot?
A couple of times.
Okay.
Not necessarily the racing, but the gift that my dad and my brother have with cars, and that they're very their creativity is like building engines and restoring old cars, and they have an old Indian motorcycle from one of the original motorcycling days back in the 30s and stuff like that. So that's where their creativity is, that Mikey really appreciated.
Now that kind of talent requires a really like photographic memory almost.
Probably.
Well, just being able to like know how an engine fits and you take it apart and you be able to put it back together.
Yeah. My dad was building doom buggies when I was a teenager. Planning them out, doing them in our garage when I was a kid. So.
What did your mom do?
They own a foreign car repair business, so that's what they've
done
together.
Yeah.
So my mom's always done like the bookkeeping and the phones and
it's in the
stuff like
is it
that.
in the cities?
Yeah, it's on Como Avenue in St. Paul.
What's it called?
Midwest V.
Okay.
It has a huge mural on the side. Nick and Rick and them guys did a graffiti mural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's on Como and what?
It's off of Marion, maybe half a block. So it's Como and Marion is probably the closest.
I'll have to check it out.
Oh yeah. Check my graffiti in my Facebook page. It's,
your garage is awesome.
Yeah, it changes all the time.
Was Mike ever into graffiti at all?
Not really. He painted. Like duck scenes and those types of things, sunsets, and not graffiti.
Favorite project of Mike's?
I do like the Sixth Sense stuff because it was so much fun. I have favorites on everything.
Yeah.
So I don't really have a favorite project. I guess maybe some of the stuff that he was doing right before he passed that he didn't complete that we'll finish because some of it was fun again for him.
Yeah.
And so I guess the more fun the projects were for him, the more I liked them.
Was that something that you could tell out the gate, like immediately, that part of him was in it?
Yeah.
What's something, like, how would you be able to kind of gauge that?
Well, I'm his mom, so I could actually... There's just mannerisms and things like that you could actually tell, oh, this was really exciting for him. Or he didn't really want to be doing that, but he was being forced to do that.
Yeah.
And not necessarily just with music. I mean, some of the goofy things in the house that you had to do is that anything you were interested in, you could do, but you had to do it for a year. So when Mikey was interested in doing special effects and making movies and all that stuff, he had to do that for a year. So he had to take classes at the Science Museum. He had to learn how to make fake glass and how to take camera shots and do different things. And when he, was interested in karate, you had to do that for a year. He became a black belt in a year.
When?
Well, he was about 13.
Okay.
Yeah. Whatever it was, the piano, building forts, skateboarding, I did not care. And I would support you and pay for it and get you there and be your partner. But you are doing it for 1 year. And then after that 1 year, it's up to you. If you want to continue, great. Mike usually didn't, because in his mind, he had probably mastered all he wanted to and moved on to something else.
Right. You mentioned that he was first and foremost a storyteller, songwriter. How did he get into battling?
I think that became natural as a teenager.
Yeah.
And being all testosterone and I'm bigger, badder, better. And how do I prove that in this world of hip hop? Well, I battle. And then when I'm not saying anything, I stand there and just cross my arms and smile at you.
Yeah.
Which it makes you more infuriating, which makes you lose your place more, which makes me come out on top.
Yeah. Did you attend his battles a lot?
Yeah.
Did you go to most of his shows? Is it whenever you could, you'd go?
Yeah. Well, and especially when he was underage.
Well,
he didn't go to a single solitary show.
Yeah.
Not without me.
Yeah.
That wasn't happening. Even that very first, Stress had mentioned at the current, that very first sound set, which was like the mid 90s, or late 90s, whatever. And Mike and Max were like probably 14 years old, and they didn't play until like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. And I was there every minute of that whole time. There, even karate tournaments and things when he was underage and he didn't get to go out of town to go do the diamonds or whatever, win his big trophies, scribble jam, none of that stuff. That kid was underage, man.
Yeah.
I went, his grandma went. That was how it happened.
Yeah. So what at Blaze Battle?
I was there.
Yeah. How did it when he got off stage and he had won? What was his reaction with you?
Let's go home, I'm tired. That was a really long day. That filming and stuff took like over 16 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was
to
hot.
Get, like,
it was
barely
to get
footage,
barely an hour worth of footage. Yes. So he was tired. He wanted to go. He was done.
What was the most surprising material that he did? Or was each new project a surprising departure from?
Yeah, was a surprising difference or a growth. And I guess I have to say the most surprising thing is when he makes me dead in Murder of Memories. When we were talking about Mikey's music and one of the songs that he needed to explain to me, and I had said Murder of Memories, and it is, I think, Red Whipped in Blue. And Mike and I called it Mama's Lullaby, and Murder of Memories is about Vietnam. And I've used both of those songs in teaching and as curriculum, so they're kind of confusing. Sorry. When he was making it, we called it Mama's Lullaby. And so then when it came out, I wasn't sure what it is. But that was the most surprising thing, is that, he makes me dead in that whole song.
Yeah.
And
that is about you.
Or no, is it? It's not.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, sort of it is. It's about like my nationality and his father's nationality, and then growing up in the United States, which has its own nationality in the sense, or each culture has its own differences. And then how do you blend them and how do you make them? And then what do you get out of it is what it's about. But he took me for a car ride to explain to me about how he made me dead in this song. And I needed to be really, because if people come at me and, start saying you're not and all this other stuff, he just wanted me to know. And whenever we had anything like overly important to say, we'd take a car ride. because that way there's no phones, there's no interruptions, there's nobody at the door, there's no nothing.
You had mentioned that it was really hard to get him to sleep as a kid.
Even as an adult, he never slept. Yeah. As a baby, he didn't sleep. We used to drive. We used to take turns driving around all night long because in the car would be the only place he'd sleep. We used to take shifts. We did, my whole family. Yep.
I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, I've actually now have met a couple other people that's the way that they were, and that one or two of their kids have been.
So how do you sleep?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, I'm old, so I don't, as you get older, you need less sleep. But I've always probably slept only about 4 to 6 hours a night. And I was a kid that didn't take naps and wouldn't go to bed or any of that stuff.
Payback.
Yeah. You get a child worse than you are. That's called the mother's curse.
How do you perceive Mike's growth from the early stuff in the basement with Max to being in a band and the completely improvisational Face Candy?
Inevitable. As a person and as a musician, you grow and you change and you become more intricate in things. And once that starts to happen, then there is no real alternative other than to start to combine as many genres as you can, or start to pull all the information and music together from everywhere that you feel it, or, does that make sense?
Yeah. How did his goals shift in that?
Mike never really had goals as far as music went, in the sense that, he never was like, I'm going to be famous, or I'm going to make a lot of money, or I'm going to, do this particular thing or that particular thing, or be noted for this or that. His goals was more about, how can I reach the most people, and when am I going to be able to do that? Which is why he was doing comedy, because he actually had started thinking that maybe music was too limiting.
Yeah.
And that people have put him into too much of a box, and so maybe he needs to do comedy.
When did he start doing that?
Well, he's always done comedy.
Yeah.
And,
but like,
talk to him for 10 minutes. And, but actually started working on like doing routines and stuff probably the last couple of years.
Did he ever go out and do it?
Other than a few times, like at shows that he was performing, and there were like maybe, time in between or technical difficulties or whatever, and he did his little stuff. He hadn't gotten a chance. He actually had just met probably a month or so before one of the guys that owns the comedy club, and the guy asked him to come and do a show. But he hadn't gotten a chance to do that.
Could you help me like lay out the history of like the first pieces to kind of how it progressed in his career?
Sure. Well, the stuff that's out, like Firstborn, Oliver Hart, EA. Well, like Stress had said at the Current, the Sixth Sense is what they did first.
Yep.
And that's what everybody thought Firstborn would be, but it's not.
Yeah, no.
It's not.
No.
In the couple of years between the Sixth Sense and Firstborn came out.
So Sixth Sense was when he was 14?
Yeah. That would be put Max about 16, Mike about 14.
Okay.
Yep. And so then Firstborn came out. It's hard to say because it was probably done like by the time Mikey was probably 16, maybe 17. But I don't think it came out until after he was probably 18 or 19. I'm not really sure. Dates and stuff are hard.
Yeah, because music, it took longer before than now. Because you can he could master a track in his basement and put out the next day now.
Right, yeah. Which is kind of what he did with the last stuff, like the Kill the King and solo stuff and the freestyle thing that he put out the last year or two. Yeah, I mean, he kind of did them in the basement and then just put it out on the net and, did that stuff.
Yeah.
So, okay, there was Firstborn, then...
Oliver Hart would have been after Firstborn.
Okay, so Oliver Hart would have been when him and Max were not seeing eye to eye on what direction to make music.
Yeah.
And Mikey wanted to make more probably real music, start using real instruments and doing live things like that. He made Oliver Hart, and then he toured Oliver Hart without Max. And Max did some other stuff.
Did he tour alone?
Or as when he would perform?
When
what
he
was
performed
his...
Oliver Hart, he was by himself. And I think that tour was with AC and Prince Paul.
Did you go on tour with him ever?
Yes and no.
Yeah, you'd go on certain dates.
You're right. And when I think that really first long Atmosphere tour, I went out like every 3 weeks and spent a good 3-4 days with him.
How long were they out for?
He was probably 18 or just turning 18. And they had probably gone out for, I don't know, maybe 2 months, maybe even longer.
That's a long time to leave home for the first time and be away from what you know.
Yeah.
Did you talk a lot while he was on tour?
Yeah. Well, yes and no. When the first
no
few
cell
times,
phones, I would get.
Well, no, yeah, I had cell phones. They did not have cell phones. And when they first went out, at least the first couple of years when they went out, my cell phone worked everywhere. The other cell phones didn't work.
Mom.
And some people, yeah. I mean, my cell phone worked in the mountains, worked in Canada, worked everywhere.
Yeah.
And so they had that cell phone. I would think a few times they would leave it like just in the van up front because it was the phone that worked for anybody who needed to use it or whatever. And it would hit redial and I would get these phone calls in the middle of the night, in the middle of the day, in whatever. And I could hear them all in the van. You know, it would be Bird and Slug and Max and Mikey, and they're talking this and talking that about that show or this show, or they've got to get here, they've got to get there.
Yeah.
And I'd be screaming into the phone, "You called me. You called me." And I remember one time I heard Bird very distinctly say, "I hear your mom's voice even in the van." And it's like, because you called me. You know, so I heard a lot more than I needed to hear, that's for sure. But yeah, Mike would call. Sometimes a couple times a day, sometimes, you know, especially after a show. I would get the instant play-by-play, the hour to 2 hour critique of what went on.
Yeah.
Because it was either the best show they've ever done or it was the worst show they've ever done.
Yeah, no in between.
None.
Do you feel like you offered him as kind of a sounding board to have him play out his own thoughts?
Yes. We were each other's sounding board. I said that, I think, at the dedication in my speech, that he was my sounding board. And, you know, we were each other's sounding boards. He would not only, like, tell what was going on so he could get his emotions and feelings out, so he could actually, like, think of things more calmer if it was a bad situation or if it was a good situation. But also for, like, ideas on what I want to do or what, you know, how I want to change the set or whatever. And not that he ever listened to my opinion, because he never did. And I didn't often give an opinion on that type of stuff. I would give an opinion on, you're not going to that city because you're 16 years old and you're not going that far away or whatever. But never on how the music should go or what it should be, or how, when fans got nasty and were doing mean things and death threats and all that kind of stuff, I kind of took over not letting him see a lot of that and tried to buffer as much as I could from things like that.
Well, it's just not a necessary thing to ingest. It's just hate and jealousy and
you
totally.
know, and so those types of things. And then I would bounce off of him, what do I want to do? You know, why are you making me go to college? I can't do this. I don't know how to write. I can't read. All these other things, you know. And
did he want to go to school?
No, I made him take a class, though. When he graduated from high school, me, my mom, and him all took a philosophy class. We went in the first day of class. At the end of class, Mike went up to the teacher and said, "Can I take your final? Because I'm going on tour and I'm not going to be here for 4 or 5 of the classes or whatever." And the teacher was like, "Well, no, you have to be here to get the grade." And he was like, "I can pass your final." And
first day of school?
The very first class. By the end of the 3-hour class, he's going, "I can pass your final." And he was like, "I'm smarter than you are." And he took the test and got 1 wrong. And then he was like, "See, I never have to go back to school." I was like, "Okay, I told you had to take 1 class. You have to do 1. I couldn't get him to do a year, but, you know, I could get him to do 1.
Where did the philosophy aspect of his writing come from?
It's hard to say. My mom kind of believes it's the Irish hereditary storyteller in him, in his and so that's where his ethnic comes from, and that's what she thinks. I don't know. I have no clue. He was
I just
always
listening to
this
Firstborn.
unbelievably amazing. Like I said, he was kindergarten when he first wrote his poem.
Yeah.
And I wish I could find it. It's in a box somewhere at home, because I would probably, someday I will, and I'll probably put it out.
Did you keep a lot of stuff as he was growing up?
Yes and no. Kept a few things, because you can't keep everything.
No, right.
And then when we all turn teenagers, we become, these weird pod people or something, and don't do the same types of stuff, and we don't put as much effort into things. I mean, I kept things, and like Mike's high school teacher gave me back one of the plays that he wrote in school when Mike passed, so he gave me back that, which was great.
Wow. Was he ever interested in writing, because you had mentioned movies and he was into special effects, did he ever pursue screenwriting or anything like that?
Yep. Him and a couple of different people had worked on a few different things. One of the things, and it is in one of the couple of different songs, there's some references to it about like being Plato and being in a cave and never seeing anything, and being the person who's watching yourself, painting yourself, and that was one of the big things. And I actually think I still have that. That isn't finished. And then there's a couple of songs that Mike and my mom had discussed making into plays. So
Songs of
there's
his?
a few, yeah.
Do you know which ones in particular?
I do, but I can't say,
Sure.
because we are going to do them.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yes. We have.
Yeah, no,
quite
you
a-
and Brady O'Rourke are cooking up some schemes.
Yeah, we have. I got some stuff going on. I do surprises.
Yeah.
That's why we didn't say the lineup of the dedication. And that's why I didn't give the lineup at the birthday celebration last year. And that's why I'm not giving away what I'm doing next year.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned that. Mm-hmm. So when I had met Mike in passing a few times just going to shows, and I didn't find this out until about 2 weeks ago when I talked to Mike Shank. And didn't you know Jordan Micheal? Mm-hmm. So I've been friends with him for a few years, and I called him up to come down for a session. And I hadn't really played much of my stuff for anybody at that point. But I was friends with Jordan, and I felt comfortable showing him. And so he called Mike Shank and said, "Do you want to come to this kid's house and rap?" And he said, "Yeah, I'll call Mike too and see if he wants to come." And Mike said, "Oh yeah, I'll come, but don't tell dude I'm coming." And so he gets out of the car, and it's like, okay, well, I'm about to play my stuff for one of the best rappers ever. And he started freestyling within 3 seconds when I hit play, and that was like the ice broke, and he just really made me feel at ease. And he asked me, "Well, what are you doing with your music?" And I said, "Not really anything. I haven't really pursued it or pushed it." He said, "Well, you should, because this is good." And that really changed my perspective of myself. And that was just in a 4-hour session of hanging out with him. And I can only imagine how many times he did that everywhere he went.
Yeah. Mike was the best form of advertising there is, or the worst form of advertising there is. Because if he likes something, he will tell everybody.
Uh-huh.
If he didn't like something, he will tell everybody. So if he actually said, he liked it, you should do it, that was true and honest. It wasn't
Yeah.
I don't know what you would call it.
I asked Terrell about that, and he said if he didn't like it, he would maybe not have been, he wouldn't have been a jerk about it, but he would have said, he would have offered critique and criticism and maybe ways you could expand or get better.
Right.
And not that he wasn't, he was always about getting better, and that was the thing I took from him.
Yeah.
How did the improvisation, was he always really on, like, off the cusp?
Yes. My family is very dark, humor, witty, and not me, but the rest of them. And so there's
How many siblings
always,
do you have?
I have one brother and one sister.
Okay.
So there was always the bantering going on between my brother and sister and Mikey, and there's this whole thing that Mike was the king and that made me the queen, and my sister's the princess, and there's just this weird dynamic that goes on, and so Mike kind of grew up with that
Yeah.
sarcastic bantering going on.
Uh-huh.
And so it was...
That's a natural progression to battling.
Yeah, and even to the improv stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's none of it was ever hurtful or anything in my family, but it was always very jesty.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how he looked and took his improv.
Yeah, I hear that. So I think we were at Oliver Hart.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Back to Oliver Hart. So, okay, Oliver Hart was his...
That was his baby.
Yeah, pretty much. And actually, it's not Oliver Hart. It's all of her heart.
Yeah.
And when you say it fast. Because Mike's longtime girlfriend was a jerk and cheated on him. And so he wanted to do something to show that he could do something different and more. And Max was going to do his own music thing, and Mike wanted to do this. And so that's where that came about.
Yeah.
And then would be E&A. And that was kind of, in some ways, a little bit going back to probably the Sixth Sense stuff that the kids made for me.
Yeah. I hear that.
And more of the back and forth, battle-y.
It's a lot of fun.
More fun. We're the bigger, badder, better.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do about it type stuff.
Right.
And then it's By the Throat.
Well, in between there's quite a bit of...
there's Carbon Carousel.
Yeah. So was that...
And and Carbon Carousel was 2. I think Nervous was the first CD, and then there's the others, the Carbon Carousels. And then there is the first Face Candy, which was just live 2 weeks of like Terrell and Jeremy, or not Jeremy, but Casey and JT and Chris and Will and Mikey. And they did this like 2-week tour, and they just recorded it all. And that would be the first Face Candy.
Okay.
And then would come probably By the Throat.
So he toured E&A with Max.
Yep. Well, touring, Max has a son.
Okay.
So Max moved to Milwaukee.
Yeah.
So, and that kind of made it more difficult for them to work together and on stuff.
Yep.
I mean, not so much like nowadays, but even just, 8-10 years ago, it was hard to send music files back and forth and all of that type of stuff. So that made it more difficult. And Mike really concentrated on like the rock stuff and the singing and actually doing voice and actually doing guitar and taking lessons and that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really a break, other than it was like a break from touring.
Yeah.
But it was just a way to do different music.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
It does. Carbon Carousel was kind of a rock band.
Yep.
I mean, he still would rap, but it's a rock band first and foremost.
Yep.
Was that something he always wanted? I mean, you said when he was
He was like 6 when he made his first rock band.
Yeah.
So, I would say that's something he always wanted. Yeah, long time coming.
How did him and Jeremy become friends?
Don't know how they met. Mike was hanging out at like the Artist Quarter in downtown, and I know he was, going to different shows and stuff, and so maybe through Mike Lewis.
Oh, yeah, that would make sense.
I don't know. They all kind of know each other, and they all kind of been together and stuff, so it's hard to know like who met who, where and when.
So Carbon Carousel.
Ask Jeremy.
Yeah, I will. So did he pick up a guitar after they Carbon Carousel kind of worked out?
No, he probably started with the guitar a little bit before that.
Okay. Did he write the music for those and then bring them to the band?
I think him and Jeremy wrote together. And that was one of the things that Mikey just really loved about Jeremy, is that they could write really well together.
Yeah, they spoke some kind of same language.
Yeah, and Mike was learning so much from Jeremy on the guitars and different things like that and stuff. Actually, Mike even was doing another Oliver Hart with Jeremy.
So that was one of the projects that he was working on. Mm-hmm. And did he have a studio computer?
Yeah, there's all kinds of equipment in the studio.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's
a whole wall full of it.
Has it been used at all? Have people come to the house and?
Oh no, I'd probably chop their little fingers off
Yeah.
if they tried to touch that stuff. There have been people that I have asked to come and to kind of put some of the files that Mikey was working on and stuff closer or easier to read.
Was he organized in that sense?
Yes and no.
Because I'm not.
Yes and
I
no.
am, and yes and no. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
yes and no. You're probably very organized the way he was very organized for him.
For him,
And you
yeah.
probably know.
Yeah.
Somebody else tries to go in and look at your
Yeah.
Pro Tools stuff, and you've got these folders that mean nothing
Yeah.
to what is inside them.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes.
Yeah, that's
and-
exactly what I do.
Yeah. So, yes and no. So, I've had a couple of people come and look at some of that stuff and start taking some notes on what is in what files, because I do know what projects he was working on.
Yeah.
I just don't know what he filed or labeled them as.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know, because I was there and I heard the music and stuff every day, I can say, oh, this was for this project or this was for that project. But I'm not quite really ready for that yet. I don't know how much I want to hear Mikey the weeks before he passed.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that yet.
Mm-hmm. No, I can understand that completely.
So, lots of surprises in store.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So, what was the writing process like for By the Throat?
By the Throat is kind of an ending and a beginning. There were a lot of things in a couple of years that Mike was coming to resolve within himself. Like, we had a stalker, a really bad stalker, and that's what the guns are about, is that we literally had to go get permits and had to go do our stuff and had to be prepared, and that was the suggestion from the police and the courts and everything, and
Yeah.
we needed to always have people with us and never be alone and all kinds of stuff. And so that's where a lot of that comes from, and the dog passing, and Mike moved, and left home, and and that type of stuff. So there were a lot of endings and beginnings
Yeah.
to By the Throat.
In 2009, 2008, 2009. Mm-hmm. I hear a lot of live instrumentation. Mm-hmm. It sounds like Jeremy played
Jeremy,
on it.
I'm pretty sure Casey, I'm pretty sure JT, Mikey played.
Yeah. Did Mike ever get into drums?
Never.
Because he's got an uncanny sense of rhythm.
Yeah. And I don't know why. Could be that drum set my parents bought him when he was too little to sit in it and bang on it, and then,
So there's this saying that's stars that burn the brightest burn the shortest. How do you feel that pertains to Mike?
I would agree. Or the one where the candle that burns on both ends burns out quickest.
Yeah.
I would agree. There was an interview done at KQ, and I think it was the morning show, and the people who were interviewing him, the woman who interviewed him, one of the question was something about, since, in your 20 years of being in the business and doing this stuff, how have things changed and stuff. And Mike said, I'm only 20 years old. So he was always farther ahead than he was age-wise.
Yeah.
But I have a strange philosophy too. I feel that when we have completed the task, we're here. No matter if that's 2 seconds after we're born or 100 years after we're born, then that's when we pass.
Yeah.
And I know Mike was feeling, that's one of the reasons he was moving to comedy, is that he was kind of, there wasn't much he could get people to do with music anymore. He really thought he needed to go beyond music to get his message across, or to get people to listen.
To listen to him.
Right. Yes.
As a human.
Yeah.
And not as Eyedea.
Right.
Where did Eyedea come from?
There's an old saying, or I'm not sure who came up with it all, but thought and concept makes idea with abilities. I don't know if that was when they were all breaking and they were, because he was Eyedea when he was a breakdancer.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, because Max was the DJ and, he did some breaking too and stuff. And so Phil, Mario, Damien, Jason, I don't know where that all came from,
Right.
but that was...
That's cool. I read in a note you wrote, Mike always said he'd come back as Rain.
Yes.
Why is that?
My brother has a chronic disease, and I donated a kidney to him about 10 years ago. And the first time Mike was ever in the throes of what death really is probably when he was about 6 or 7 and my brother was in the hospital and had to have both his kidneys removed. And Mike was very curious and questioning about, well, what if you die and what happens and where do you go? And so we had the conversation about, well, some religions believe this and some believe that and some believe this. And, and he asked what I believe, and I believe that we're all energy and we can't be created or destroyed. We just change. And so we become something else. And then we got into karma and we got into, reincarnation. And people tell you that if you're a good person, you come back as a higher form. If you're a bad person, you come back as a lower form and all this stuff. And Mike said he was going to come back as rain because that way everybody would be nurtured. I always took that as water. Because we live in Minnesota. Yeah. So, I was thinking, okay, water, rain, snow, ice, whatever. Okay, that's fine. That's what you're going to do. And then, he had a friend die. I mean, Blow talked about it and stuff. And that's kind of when he wrote Ode to Hip Hop, because then he wasn't sure. When he was little, he was just more talking about what happens to you when you die. But now that his friend died and that his influence and mentor, it was more about, well, what happens to their stuff, in the sense that if they don't have material stuff, what happens to who they are? Their thoughts, their process, their stuff. Then that's where Ode to Hip Hop comes from.
How did Mike and Sess meet?
That one you'd have to probably talk to Janessa. Janessa used to live next to him or down the street from him or something. And, they were all hanging out at the corner or, down the street or whatever, and listening to music and breaking. And everybody else was rapping and that type of stuff. And I might
can
be an
hear
overbearing mother.
They had an instantaneous connection. I just hear it in the way that they both rap, that they would get along well.
Yeah. Mike was young. I mean, he was, 13, 14 years old.
Yeah. So was that his first experience with death?
Probably. I mean, he was alive when my grandparents and stuff died, but that is not, it wasn't somebody that he was close to or connected to.
Personable.
Yeah. I mean, because he was little when, his great-grandparents passed and stuff. So it was, but yeah. So that would be his first.
Did they record anything together?
I don't know. I would say if they did, Glow would probably know where. I mean, they wouldn't have at my house because there was no studio or anything at that time yet.
Glow mentioned that Mike had this box of tapes.
Yes, I have a box of tapes.
And is it all from his crew growing up?
Pretty much.
B-sides, demos, whatever.
Yep, pretty much. Whatever they were doing, whenever they were doing it, wherever, at the grocery store, at the Landmark Center, at the neighborhood house, wherever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
did Mike ever
do
any youth work at all?
Yes and no.
Go hang out with kids and do music?
Yes and no. With my students, yes, all the time. He used to come in and, talk to them. He would do stuff. The kids at the band, at the dedication, those were kids that Mike had actually gone to see them the last few years perform in their school band. And kind of hang out with them and talk to them and give them, little insights and sign their phones and give them posters and stuff like that. So in that sense, yes. But before that, not really. But again, before that, he was a teenager himself. So, although as a teenager, he was always doing stuff. I mean, one of the plays that he did at Highland and one of the rap songs, they were like, you can't do that because he's talking about slavery and stuff. And he was like, oh, yes, I can, watch. And he did. And it turned out really great.
Yeah.
But so in that
forcing
sense.
a talking point.
Yeah.
Did you consistently listen to his stuff as he was working on it? Would he show you things he was working on?
Oh, he would probably never show me, but it was constantly going.
You're upstairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there is no getting away from it. And then, of course, it was you had to play it in the car so that we could see how, so that he could hear how it Well, him and Max didn't get their driver's licenses until they were in their 20s. So there was no in the car without me.
Yeah.
So, okay, we've got to try it in this tape player. We've got to try it. We got to go over to grandma's to try it in this stereo. And,
Yep.
And so, I kind of just heard it always, all the time.
I bet.
So there wasn't any here, come and listen to this. Sometimes it was, could you shut the door? Because I've heard that 900 million times. I need you to be less.
Is it silent in the studio? Did he sound treat it really well?
Yes. Yes, if you shut the doors, the studio door and the basement door, you don't really hear much.
Sure.
But that never really happened. I mean, I'd have to actually shut the doors because he would never shut the doors.
Yeah.
He wanted everybody to hear it. He'd have the windows open so that the neighbors could hear it,
Have you had any moments in the last year where you've been overwhelmed by the amount of people that have gotten involved in Mike's life?
Yes and no. The crazies, oh yeah.
Yeah.
The people who have been extremely supportive, extremely helpful, extremely nice, and just wanted to say, Mike changed my life, or I heard this song and it made me, think, or I want to be a better person, or you're going to make me cry, or, I don't know how you do it, or those types of things.
Yeah.
That has been great. And it's not necessarily overwhelming. Sometimes it gets very difficult. When Mikey passed, I got 7,000 emails.
Yeah.
And I probably only responded to 500.
Yeah. How could you?
Because I started sitting down thinking, well, if I did 30 a day, it would take me 30 years to respond to everybody.
Yeah.
And so some of those types of things are overwhelming because I would like to.
Yeah.
And not that I didn't scan everyone and look at them. I just didn't get a chance to respond to them,
Yeah.
So, and there are people that have done stuff like they've named their children after Mike. They've, put up transition houses and helped do other stuff, and they dedicated parts of farms and all kinds of things in Mike's name and stuff.
Yeah.
That's all wonderful and great, but at the same time it's I want to go see that, and I want to go see that, and I want to go see that.
Yeah.
But I can't because that's just crazy.
Yeah.
I would spend 2 years just trying to figure out how to travel to all the places, to all the people that have done such nice things, and so that's kind of overwhelming. But that has more to do with what I would like to be able to do than it does people contacting me.
Yeah.
Because I'd like to be able to reciprocate, and I'd like to be able to see the things and go, but that's kind of crazy.
Where was his favorite place to travel? Did he like traveling? Or was it kind of just
yes and no.
a circumstance of him touring?
Yes and no. I mean, some of the vacations and stuff we took, Mike didn't like the cold. So places that were warm. And I would say probably the one place that he mentioned a lot to me that he really liked was Hawaii.
Did he play out there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
What's something that you'd like to say to any mothers that might be listening?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Mothers are the root of all evil. We either don't do what our children need, or we do too much for our children. So I guess what I would want to say to mothers is find the balance. Because if you can find that balance, you're going to turn out one heck of a kid.
How about sons?
Mothers and sons. That's an interesting thing. You can never hug your son too much. And you can never tell him that it's okay to tell people that he loves them, no matter who they are.
Yeah.
Because that's something that I don't think men or boys get a lot.
Yeah.
They get a lot of the, oh, you're tough, oh, don't cry, oh, don't this, oh, do that. That was one of the rules. You come or go from my house, you get hugged and kissed, hello and goodbye. That's boy, girl, cat, dog. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Who were some of his role models, male role models growing up?
Well, my dad, my brother, Jimmy, his godfather.
Yeah. I met Jimmy at the
when I went up to man the gate at the
at the dedication.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I really felt a connection with him.
Yeah,
He seems like
he's
a really great guy.
Yeah. We've been friends since we were in high school.
Yeah.
So long time. And then there's other bits and pieces of people, like his karate teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was always take the good, Mr. Greenberg, his philosophy teacher in high school. I mean, there were a lot of, good male role models in his life.
Did he keep in touch with those people as he got older?
Well, his godfather, of course, my brother and my dad, of course. I don't think his karate teacher was named Dan. I think he saw him a few times and invited him to a few shows, but not, let's go lunch and stuff like that. And I don't know about his teacher, other than I'm pretty sure Mike would invite specific people to shows. And so he would always call like Ali and Slug and Stress. And I know he would always call a couple of his teachers. There's a female teacher he used to call Diane, I think is her first name. And probably Mr. Greenberg and a couple, and Phil and a couple other people that he would always say, come and see me do this. I mean, he always his godfather and his grandparents, of course, and, my brother and stuff.
I didn't write down what song this is from, but this is one of Mike's a stanza. When I close my eyes, I see eternity as a story, a God that imagined a God that imagined me, and I am God, and so on, and so on. How do you feel that represents Mike?
Yeah, I used to worry he was the second coming. I used to tell people if he is, we're in trouble. We are in a lot of trouble because that kid's going to ruin us. But that kind of goes back to parts of the screenplay that they were writing, because it was from a point of view from somebody else watching themselves. And I guess it represents the depth in which people are and the amount that Mike could actually see the different layers of humans or humanity, and wanted those layers to be told.
Was he a guarded person in terms of sharing true parts of himself?
Yes and no. It depends. There's multiple ways of inner circling and outer and the rippling effect. So there's this inner circle group of people, core people that Mike had in his life that shared everything with. And then there's the next group that could be more peer-ish or friend-ish that got a lot or most of it, and then there would be more of the business that got part, and then the fan got, and so there was this ripple effect. There was, certain people that it's unfortunate, but I truly did know everything. Mike had every conversation with anybody and turned around and had it with me. I used to say things like, I do not need to know that information. There was a time going down to Scribble where they were all having a conversation about who they had sex with and what they were doing. And on this 13-hour drive, that's not information I need to have.
No.
And so what I did was scream.
Your mother.
Well, I screamed, do you want to know how many people I've had sex with and what I did with them? And they all covered their ears and said, we can never hear those words come out of your mouth again. And my answer was, stop telling me everything. You do not need to tell me everything. I do not need to know what girls did what, on what tour, where, when, and how. You do not need to call me because somebody jumped up on the stage and ripped their shirt off. I don't need to know that. But I got pretty much everything. And more than I ever wanted to know.
Awesome. I think we're good.
Excellent. Well, thank you.
Again, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm sure other people will too. So, yes.
No.
Awesome. Kathy Averill.
Thanks.
After we shut off the mics, Kathy gave me a piece of advice I'll never forget. I was explaining how I get turned off by excessive and endless self-promotion. Not so much from others, but myself. How it feels overbearing, and how I feel it turns people off. And you know what she told me? Get over yourself. Some people might take offense to that, but she's right. The self is the idea of being able to distinguish me from you. Kathy told me no one ever can or ever will represent my passion and work in the same fervor and flow I will. She couldn't be more right. Unique Techniques is going to bring me places I would have never dreamed of 5 years ago, because I know I'm creating something no one else can or will, because it's mine. I take time out of my insanely busy life to book, coordinate, write, record, shoot, edit, mix, and produce every interview and video on my own, while working 50-hour weeks and writing new music, for no other reason than the fact that I'm PCP and ain't no one in the world that can do it like me. I'm going to leave you with a song from one of the most life-changing experiences I've ever had. Whenever I listen to this song, it brings me back to the moment Mike played it, sitting in my studio in September 2010, strumming away on my out-of-tune classical guitar because he had to get it out, that which is undefinable but unmistakably art. Mike changed the way I view my musical creations and gave me the confidence to pursue my artistic endeavors to their fullest. I leave you with Micheal Larsen playing one of my favorite songs of his, Skinny, on September 25th, 2010, at Unique Techniques, hanging out like a normal guy when he was anything but. Happy birthday, Mike. Peace.
Much man used to say to me, don't play with smoke and mirror. You might see something you weren't ready to see, or worse, you might start to believe that you're actually here. She was 19 when she came to me and offered her apple in exchange for my smile. And I would soon fall into her world with my head over heels, never again to stand on solid ground. They called her crazy, called their bluff, and we called each other shit we didn't know the meaning of. She was my dream girl, I was hurt, drunk, and we were too young, dumb, repulsive, loaded guns in love.
Yeah, that's right.
People show you their past by how they walk when there's wind. Tell you their history by how close their bones are to their skin. She learned to be ashamed of the body she was in, from a big world that decided beauty's only in the eye of the thin. So it's binge and purge, stomach acid burn. She sings perfectly in tune, but no one understands her words. She said, build me a castle. So I went to work and ignored the problem in the almighty name of her. I've been here before, it happens every time. I stay so focused on the light, I wind up going blind. I let the sign slip by, didn't realize she was disappearing into thin air right in front of my eyes. Wise man used to say to me, don't play with smoke and mirrors. More 2-pack and a half a day, and I sleep by myself 'cause no one else.